Hot news: smaller crowds turn out for third annual Women's March events. The New York Times. By N. Washington. Whether it was stormy weather, or the simple waning of interest over time, the third annual Women's March events on Saturday attracted much smaller crowds than in years past. In Washington, in a frigid marble plaza only blocks from the White House, early attendees at first seemed to be outnumbered by barkers hawking T-shirts and buttons. "I am disappointed. It's definitely not." But as the morning progressed, throngs of marchers began to fill the plaza, and spirits visibly lifted. "I came 2 years ago. It's definitely." The events around the country were partly a celebration of what has been achieved since the first march. An unprecedented, but the gatherings were also a test of how the movement has weathered the storm of controversy in recent months. The New York-based Tamika Mallory, co-president of Women's March, has publicly praised Louis Farrakhan, leader of the Nation of Islam, who is widely reviled for anti-Semitic speeches. The Women's March. Some marchers said they were conflicted about whether to come, given the controversy over the anti-Semitism charges. In Washington, in the end, they chose to do it, because apathy is not an option, said Ms. Klein, a 39-year-old special education teacher. The controversy over Mr. Farrakhan added to between the National Women's March group and some of the local activists around the country who planned marches in their own hometowns. Read our report on Saturday, those divisions manifested themselves in 2 rival marches in New York and 2 in Philadelphia. In New York, some marchers said they had done research to decide which event to attend, but many said they merely went to whichever was more conveniently located. The march held by, about 4 miles south, in Foley Square, a rally planned by a group affiliated with the National Women's March attracted a modest crowd. "I was worried that it was going to be small, and it turns out it's small," said Donna McDonough, a 69-year-old registered nurse who traveled by train from Hamden, Connecticut. Noting the controversy in Philadelphia, where the 2 rival events were separated by only a few hundred yards, many marchers weren't even aware of the difference between the events or didn't care. The marches did not attract many high-profile national figures, although Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, who recently announced she was running for president in 2020, appeared at an event in Iowa. Representative, it is difficult to say how much the controversy depressed turnout. Even before the controversy, organizers of the Washington March debated the idea of trying to hold another big national demonstration, knowing it would be impossible to come close to the turnout of the first year, when more than 500,000 people gathered on the streets of the capital. Joe Rieger, professor of sociology at Oakland University in Michigan, who studies feminist movements, said other factors that can depress turnout include activist burnout, and paradoxically, success. Marches or movements can lose some momentum when people see some of their issues being addressed, she said. With the recent midterm, some who marched in previous years said the controversy was just one more reason to stay home. Savannah Fritz, a 24-year-old supervisor at a homeless shelter who marched in Boston in 2017 and Philadelphia last year, decided to sit out this year because she felt that the money spent on stages and portable toilets could be put to better use. "I obviously know that protests are an important part of social justice, but I just feel like the money would be way better spent actually combating the issues the Trump administration has created," she said. The anti-Semitism. Still, there was evidence on Saturday that the political events of the last 2 years had inspired a new level activism among many women. Lori Clark, 62, a retired schoolteacher from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, said the 2018 Women's March in Philadelphia was the first time she had attended a public protest. "I am just a normal everyday average woman," Ms. Clark said. "I would never have thought. I hate crowds," she added. The reality of it. And in Washington, Hillary Rouge, a 38-year-old marketing director for a wine importer, said she and others had traveled from Brooklyn to come back to where it all began. They were members of a local chapter for the liberal grassroots group Indivisible. The chapter has and she said they played a small but satisfying role in the 2018 election that gave Democrats a working majority in the New York State legislature, and in the subsequent lobbying campaign that ended this week with the legislature's vote to liberalize the state's restrictive election laws. This time there are not as many, Ms. Rouge said of the march this year. But it's a long battle.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park,